In the PR nightmare with regards to the debacle that was the deplatforming and defunding by Patreon of Lawrence Southern and several members of the Defend Europe organization, CEO Jack Conte attempted to address the hyper-negative fallout of the platform's decision with a YouTube video on his own personal channel. First, I'm going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt because after watching this video as well as an interview he did over at Dave Rubin's channel, he seems to have reconsidered and reversed his original decision that content creators would have no chance to appeal the decision nor could see any redress when Patreon cuts creators from their supporters. But second, and more importantly, I don't believe that Lawrence nor those of the Defend Europe organization's deplatforming was solely based on what Conte calls manifest observable behavior. The reason being is that his own personal political bias was manifest in his explanation of what he believed Lawrence, as well as by extension those of Defend Europe's missions, actions were that necessitated their defunding. And this is the important part, and I will return to this shortly, but Conte continually referred to NGO boats that wait off the coast of Libya, and by the way are accused by Italian prosecutors of working in collusion with human traffickers. He continually refers to these boats as rescue boats that are selflessly in the Med trying to prevent human casualties caused by human traffickers. In reality, these quote-unquote rescue ships lay in wait just off the coast of Libya, turning off their transponders and do not follow international law by taking the migrants to the nearest safe port, which would be a dozen in neighboring Tunisia, but ferries thousands all the way across the Mediterranean Sea to the handouts that await in the welfare states of Europe. What Conte calls rescue boats are in fact working in collusion with people smugglers and are ferrying in massive numbers male economic migrants from sub-Saharan Africa who have paid vast sums to people traffickers to get them into Europe because they know once they claw their way inside it will be very difficult for the European states because of the bureaucratic nightmare that is the EU to expel them. With the consequences, cost, and dysfunction that these NGOs have visited upon Italy via transporting these tens of thousands of sub-Saharan economic migrants to their shores, and without solidarity from other EU member states, the Italians are quite literally at the end of their rope. Virginia Raggi, the mayor of Rome, has demanded that the government stop sending migrants to her city, which is on the verge of war, in her words, because of the exacerbated social tension and destruction of community cohesion that the migrants have brought with them. Italy's call for other EU countries to take some of the burden, vibrant enrichment and diversity, off of them and accept NGO ships filled with migrants has gone unheeded. And recently, when Italy threatened to give papers to 100,000 sub-Saharan Africans and unleash them upon Europe, the Austrian government threatened to send the military to their shared border. And in the Mediterranean itself, a group of anti-immigration activists vow that once African migrants have been transferred to NGO ships to be ready to be chauffeured to Europe, they will sink the empty boats as to not allow them to be used again. And with the country in chaos and the safety of their streets evaporating fast, news comes that the Italian government has drawn up a plan to limit migrant rescue operations in the Mediterranean. And of course, both Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International claim the measures are punitive and would severely endanger lives. Well, if it's not good for Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, I'd say it's probably a good thing. The leaked 11-point plan seen by both NGOs will be presented in the coming days to a total of 9 NGOs who regularly operate migrant rescue boats off Libya. The proposed rules include a ban on making telephone calls or using flares to communicate with human traffickers along the Libyan coast, a signal that the migrant boats can launch. NGO boats will also be barred from entering Libyan territorial waters without clear indications that human lives are at risk. As well, the private rescue groups will be forced to allow Italian police to travel on board to enforce the new rules and help weed out any potential human traffickers that may be smuggling themselves along with the economic migrants. In addition, the proposal expressly forbids the transfer of passengers between boats, greatly limiting the potential number of rescues possible in a given mission. And all but 3 of the 9 NGOs operating boat in the Mediterranean have refused to sign the document. Italy has accepted more than 500,000 migrants and refugees in the past 4 years, but these NGO boats have vastly increased its intake of migrants in the past 3 years from less than 1% of the total in 2014 to what the UN High Commissioner of Refugees claims, that the private rescue teams are now responsible for up to 41% of rescues. These NGOs, by refusing to agree with the very reasonable set of demands by the Italian government, refusing to have a police presence on these boats, as well as refusing to stop coordinating their efforts with human traffickers, are showing what these boats truly are. They're part of a criminal organization that is working hard to bring illegal economic migrants from sub-Saharan Africa to Italy, and are pushing the country and the continent to its breaking point. And Mr. Conte trying to justify the illegal efforts to bring in en masse tens of thousands, no, hundreds of thousands of sub-Saharan Africans to Italy and cancelling the Patreons of the Defend Europe organization brought up Alan Kurdi, a little boy who was living in the safety of Turkey for years with his family and drowned in a boat captained by his own father in the Aegean Sea between Turkey and Greece. Well, this was the reason for doing so. I'm not going to lie, it was a very good attempt at pulling at the heartstrings of people. But that video, by the way, has 2,700 likes to 6,300 downvotes, which means it doesn't look like many people believe Jack. Maybe if Jack had just come out and said that the company was afraid of somehow being legally responsible and it was a corporate decision based on money, well, it wouldn't have looked as moral or as virtuous as bringing up a dead kid. It would have been more believable. But Jack and the Patreon offices are in America anyways. What does it matter to them if the European continent is destabilized by this unending and uncontrolled mass import of a new, permanent, unwanted underclass? What does it matter when one can virtue signal? Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. Also follow Black Pigeon on the usual social media and check out the website blackpigeonspeaks.com for more interesting information like this.